Legend of Total War here, and today we're going to be demonstrating a situation that an old buddy of mine sent in a save file, Susavile, who's one of the OG friends of the channel from back when I first started on Total War on YouTube from like 2013, 2014. So he sent in this save file here, where he has spent 284 turns basically setting this up, where he, on this turn here, spawned 200 armies playing as the Deceivers, which has obviously busted his income, but he's got plenty of total favor in there. And we're going to sort of assess this situation and see how he's done it. But if you want to check out it from his perspective, I'm going to leave a link to his channel and the video that he made on this particular situation building up to it, and I'm just going to assess it. So don't forget to check him out and give him a sub if you haven't already. Alright, so what he's done is, on this particular turn, he's done this 200 times. Although he owns most of the map, he could have actually done it more. Some of these buildings are triggering over the next few turns. But what he's done is he's built this building here everywhere. Dark Ritual, and then eventually Legion of the Changeling. And what this does is when it completes, the building is destroyed, and it spawns an army for free, kind of. I mean, you did have to put in... If we have a look at the resources required, 2,500 initially, then an additional 1,000, so 3,500 gold, plus 60 cult supplies. Obviously the cult supplies are not an issue for him at this stage of the campaign, but 60 cult supplies at the beginning of this campaign, that takes several turns to get that, you know, depending on where you are. So you have to make a judgment call whether or not that's worth it. Personally, I don't really like using this in the early stages of the campaign because I don't need to roll around with loads of armies. These armies are not immune to supply lines. As we can see here, we've got 200 supply lines active at the moment, and you always get the same army. So if we go through it, we can see here that they always get 3 units of Chaos Warriors, 2 units of Marauders of Tzeentch, 2 units of Blue Horrors, 2 units of Pink Horrors, 1 Chaos Knights of Tzeentch, and 1 Mutalith Vortex Beast. The only thing that changes is the generic Lord type that gets in there, which is just the standard, either the Demon one or the Chaos Sorcerer Lord of Metal or Tzeentch. So that's the only thing that changes there. These guys don't have any sort of bonuses attached to them, they're just regular armies. And they're usually hidden to begin with, but sometimes they're placed in a position where they could get detected very easily if they're standing on a road. Whereas this one over here, for example, unlikely to get detected. The AI doesn't actively go searching for them. What they do is they go walking through between the settlements. So this one here, for example, is likely to get detected if we don't move it. Now, these guys spawn at the beginning of your turn, not the end of it, so there's no chance of them getting detected on the turn that they spawn, so you don't need to worry about where they're going to spawn, unless they spawn right in the middle of an army and there's just no way out of it. You can always use teleport stance, but there's a good chance that... can you intercept teleport stance? I don't think you can. Doesn't matter. So yeah, you're pretty safe with these ones here. Now, in terms of the army it builds, the best thing about it is obviously getting a Mutalith Vortex Beast, which is especially good if you can get that in the early stages of the campaign. But it really doesn't take that long to build like a full stack of them if you put in the effort to do so. Even in the really early stages of the campaign, which I demonstrated in the live stream that I played with the Changeling. I think I had a full stack of Mutalith Vortex Beasts by turn 30. Of course, there's this exploit where you can recruit a full stack in 2 turns as well, which I did by accident in that particular situation. But you can get a fair few recruitment slots going, and it doesn't take too long to build it. Now, in terms of how practical it is to do something like this, I think this is really impractical because once you've set up a Trickster Cult, which is the only way that you can get one of these to spawn is add a Trickster Cult, you don't ever really need to attack this settlement ever again. This will never be lost, regardless of how many times it changes hands or whether it gets blown up. So it doesn't really matter who owns it, as long as it's not a faction like the Wood Elves that makes no money, because then you can't suck any money from it, in which case you might be better off with parasitic buildings, which causes discoverability, so that's not always best. So taking this army here and attempting to blow it up doesn't provide any value to you. I suppose you could use it where maybe you don't own the adjacent region. You use this to spawn, and then you use it to go and attack the adjacent region. But then again, you've also got other buildings where you can do that passively, where you could just expand it without requiring you to actually build an army. So I think the practicality of doing this is pretty damn minimal. I can't really see any situation where you would need to do it, especially because as a Changeling campaign, you're not really incentivized to Empire build. Once you've got a handful of Trickster cults, you've got more than enough money to complete all of your objectives. So you just don't really ever need to do this. And wiping out every single faction in the game, there's just no incentive to actually do that. Since the AI just doesn't actively try to hunt you down, there's just no need to just to actively try to destroy them. You can do it if you want, but I think you will get very bored doing it. Because it'll be like playing against somebody who's just not playing back with you. If we have a look at other options, because it's not the only building that does a similar effect, you've got the Cult Confluence here. So this is the parasitic version. Has the same amount of discoverability problems, but when it's finished, it's a little bit cheaper as well. It spawns a demonic army that is not part of your faction, it's not under your control, and it just goes ham on everyone. Now the problem with this one, I tested this out in my own campaign in early access, is that on the higher campaign difficulties, this army here basically is a revolt army and will most of the time lose to the basic garrison it goes up against. Now if you're playing on easy or normal campaign difficulty, then this army might hang around for a little while. But yeah, on the higher difficulties, this army gets sent straight back to the void almost instantly. So it doesn't provide you with any real value. All you've done is just thrown a bunch of money away and given whoever you've done it to a whole bunch of experience and money. So it actually can be detrimental, especially if you don't want the AI building up really high level lords. So I would highly advise avoiding building a reality wound. There's just no advantage to doing that whatsoever. However, you've got this option over here, the Halls of Despoiling, which again, discoverability plus 100. But once this finishes here, it doesn't create an army. It just instantly sacks the settlement. So you just get a whole bunch of money, and that's just it. And then it doesn't destroy the Trickster cult. So you could let the faction recover, and then just do it again. So for example, in Ulthuan, if you've conquered all of Ulthuan, put Trickster's cults here. Lothern is a settlement that gets pretty damn rich over time. If it got to tier 5, you could build that building and then just sack it, and you wouldn't even have to have any presence there. So if you've got a Trickster cult in every single settlement in the game, you don't even need to have any armies anymore just to mess with people. You could just keep doing that one and just keep sacking every single settlement. It'd be pretty interesting to see just how much ridiculous amounts of money you could make by plundering settlements instantly. Well, you know, sort of, but without requiring any armies or any effort, since there's no protection against it unless they discover your Trickster cult. But yeah, doing this, I think, is really not practical. I appreciate the amount of effort went into going about doing this, but I just don't see the point, because it's just not the kind of campaign where you need loads of armies, and fighting the enemy over and over again, I think, without any sort of point, in like empire building, by occupying settlements, by destroying factions, it's just not in your best interest to do that. So I think it's a little bit of a pointless feature of this faction. But I appreciate the amount of effort that went into doing this. So if you haven't checked out Susavile yet, go into the description, click on the link and chuck him a subscription, because this would have taken absolutely forever. In my own campaign playing as the Changeling, I got campaign fatigue at around turn 70, because it just became, it's just such an easy campaign where you just can't lose, and I got a bit bored messing with people. I would never have the patience to do this. But anyway, really appreciate him sending this in. Anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think of this. How practical do you think it is? Whether or not you would want to do it just for flavor's sake, because that's really what this campaign is about. Just doing whatever you want to do. Is this something that you think would add enjoyment to your campaign? For me personally, I wouldn't bother with it, because I just don't think the effects are going to provide anything tangible. Anyway, that's the end of this one. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next time. Later.